Hey guys, welcome back to Civilian Armory. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you're happy and safe and healthy and all that stuff. And if you're in quarantine, I hope you're not losing your mind. Even though things are kind of starting to open up again a little bit here in Missouri, it's still pretty. There's just not a lot to do, so I get boredom. Either how, hope you guys are all well. Today's video I wanted to talk about fire control groups and fire control group components and fire control group installation. In working rifles, right? Rifles that you would trust your life to. It is my opinion that you cannot ask for much better reliability than mil-spec style triggers. Reliability wise, mil-spec triggers are just about, in my opinion, top of the heap, right? Now, that being said, I do not run any mil-spec triggers in my guns. I run mil-spec style triggers, in that dimensionally my triggers are the same as a mil-spec trigger, but all of the triggers I run are either polished or coated or something. Primarily, I prefer to run the ALG, what they call their Advanced Combat Trigger, or the ACT. It is a mil-spec trigger that they machine up and polish up real nice, and then they apply nickel Teflon and nickel boron coating to components to increase lubricity on the components themselves, makes them smoother, makes them nicer. Either how. So I'll just go over what components are part of a mil-spec or mil-spec style fire control group, and then I'll show you how to kind of stage one up for installation, and then I'll show you how to install one. So first, the reason it's called a fire control group is because it is not just a trigger, right? This is a trigger, which is more specifically, more properly referred to as a trigger bow. Then we have our hammer. Okay, this is what actually hits the firing pin. This surface right here is what hits the firing pin, detonates the cartridge. Then we have our disconnector. That's what grabs your trigger and allows reset. We have our disconnector spring, and you'll notice it's hard to see there, but one end of that disconnector spring is bigger. It's kind of belled out a little bit. You'll see what that makes a difference in a minute. This is our trigger spring. I'll show you how to stage that up on the trigger bow. This is our hammer spring. I'll show you how to stage that up on the hammer. And then a keen eye sees that we have 3 pins here instead of 2, and I'm going to talk about this one here in a second. These two are our hammer and trigger pins. They are identical. They're the same pin. They are not tapered. It does not matter which side you put them in from. You can put them in either way. And then here have a piece that I like to use during install a lot of times that I robbed out of an ALG ACT trigger kit, fire control group kit more accurately. This is a slave pin. So I'll show you how that works. I won't use that for this installation just in case you don't have it. I don't want you guys to think I'm shortchanging you. I'll show you how to stage up your trigger for install here. So the first thing you would do is, and you'll see how this sits on here, but those are, it's gonna grab onto those parts of those cylinders there. So we're gonna start from the bottom, and we're gonna peel that up on there like that. And then we're going to come to this side, and we're going to peel him up on there like that, so that that trigger spring is sitting on the trigger like that. Okay? And that's how it needs to be for installation, so that when it sits in the lower, it has a little little pressure on it. Okay. From there, we're going to take our disconnector spring and we're going to take the big side down, and you see there's a groove here in our trigger bow, and then you see that portion there, it looks like there's just an extra notch. That's where our disconnector spring sits. We're going to put the disconnector spring in there, belled side down, and I've seen those launch across the room, but most of the time they'll sit in there pretty nice like that. And then we take the, sorry, things are rolling here. My table's not just completely level, and I'm not a carpenter. Then we're going to take our disconnector, and we're going to set him on there, and you'll notice there's a groove in that disconnector right there. And that groove sets on the disconnector spring, just like that. Get my finger out of the way, you can see it. Sits on there just like that. Now, if you have a slave pin, this is the point in time where you use your slave pin. You're going to start your slave pin in one side. You're going to give a little down pressure to your disconnector until the slave pin just falls into place, and that'll hold everything into place nice and tight for you. The slave pin is shorter, so it's not going to impede you from getting your trigger in. So if you have a slave pin, that's how you use it. A lot of times, fire control groups that are going to come with a slave pin will have it already. They'll have this all staged up just like this, with the slave pin already in there, and then all you've got to do is boom, drop it in there, and go on about your business. So then we're going to take our hammer, and we're going to put our hammer spring, stage it up on our hammer. And guys, it is possible. I've seen a bunch of people do it. It is possible to install this stuff incorrectly, and then your trigger doesn't work. So we're going to start from the back, kind of like that. And the hammer spring's a little stiffer than the trigger spring, so we're going to get him peeled over both of those pieces like that, so that when you're holding your trigger with the flat side this way, the legs should point that way as well. Your legs should point towards the side where your hammer face is on. Okay, and that's how you've properly staged up your hammer spring. So, just for the sake of showing you guys how to do it without a slave, if you had a slave, you would literally just drop this in, get it lined up, and do the same thing we're about to do. But for the people that are installing a fire control group that doesn't have a slave pin, I'm going to show you how to do it without one. So we're going to set that back there, give our slave pin a let it roll so we can lose it, and we're gonna get ourselves a lower. It is a little easier to install a fire control group without the safety barrel in there. You'll see that I have a safety barrel installed as a Radian Talon safety, but it can be done with it in there. So what we want to do is we just want to start dropping it in there, get the bow started. You'll see it just barely comes out a little bit. And then see that one just fell right into place like we need it to. That rear portion of the trigger, it goes under the safety barrel. Okay, slide it back a little bit until things look like they're going to start to align for us. You can kind of see there, kind of in that hole. You see the hole where we're going to start our pin. So we're going to get our pin just started to where it just holds that barely for us. Okay, and then we're going to take our disconnector, set him in that groove where he's supposed to be, and we're going to give it a little bit of down pressure, and we're just going to work our pin straight in there, right? Just like that. Falls all into place. Sometimes you may have to wiggle things around a little bit, and trigger pins that are right, you should be able to just barely feel them on either side, right? They shouldn't be short, they shouldn't be too long, they should be just kind of just right. Okay. Now the tricky portion, and the portion a lot of people have problems with, is getting the hammer on. Okay. So, tip to the wise here, if your safety is installed, go ahead and slip it to fire. Okay. Now we're working with a gun that's not completely a gun yet, so it's unloaded. If up to this point you were working with a gun and you're swapping a safety or something, unload your gun first. Don't be stupid. So we're going to start with our legs facing rearward, and they need to go over that safety barrel. So you got to kind of pinch them in just a little bit. let that roll across the table. You're going to push kind of down, and then with your finger in there, you want to push that as far back as possible. I have found makes it easier. And then you've just got to look, man, you guys can't see. Pull this back out. You've got to look in this hole here, that hole there, until things line up. And that's an extended bolt release, so I'm getting ready to test it, and we're just going to see how it works. So we start with our hammer like that, and we get our trigger, our hammer, sorry, down in there as far as we can get it. Then we take a pin, and when we see that everything's starting to line up for us, we're going to give some pressure to the pin. Maybe. Come on. There we go. Just like that. And you'll hear that kind of click in. That center groove on these pins, the one that goes into the hammer, there's actually a little detent in the hammer that'll kind of hold that pin. I see guys from time to time, that have anti-rotation pins that they're installed on their guns. Hey guys, these pins were designed to rotate. Okay, it keeps things from getting galded inside there. You can look at the original specs from Eugene Stoner. The pins are designed to rotate. They're supposed to rotate. They should not walk out. You shouldn't see a pin creeping out of the receiver, but they are supposed to rotate, and it's not even a terrible idea to put a little lubrication inside those components before you put the pins in. I oil them up afterwards, so it's not a huge deal. So the first thing we want to do now that we've installed this, first thing we want to do is make sure we have safe. Okay, so we've just installed it. We want to go ahead and see if we can put it in safe with the hammer up. You should not be able to. Okay, so that's a good sign. We want to cock our hammer. You'll hear it click, and when it'll take the pressure. Then you want to make sure you have safe. So we can engage safe. Now does safe work? When we pull the trigger, nothing happens. So now we're going to take our finger and put it in front of the hammer so that the hammer doesn't fly forward and bust off your bolt catch. I've seen people do that before. So we're going to kind of hold this hammer. We're going to go ahead and select fire, and now pull the trigger, and that should move, right? So it allows the hammer to come all the way forward. Holding the trigger to the rear, we're going to check our reset. We're going to push the hammer back till it clicks. We're going to let completely off the hammer, and then we're going to ease up on the trigger. Now we have reset. Okay, and check it again. We're going to put our finger in front of the hammer, pull the trigger, and the hammer should be able to go. Push our hammer back till it clicks, let off, and then we're going to ease off the trigger, and we've got a nice crisp reset, and we've got safe, right? And there you go, guys. That's how you install a mil-spec or mil-spec style AR15, M4, M16, M4, A1, A2, blah, blah, trigger, fire control group, whatever you want to call it. That's how you install them. Those are the different components. Thanks for watching.